Hi, it's Jim Peters on the Peters Principles, and as you know, you never know who you're going to get on Peters Principles, and we've had this man before. This is JimMilinazzo, city councilor and former mayor, and Mr. Former Mayor, we put your old background up.
Oh, nice. Okay. Oh, good. Oh, good. Yep. The mayor's reception room, Pericles. Yep.
Pericles.
Yeah. Pericles actually made it downtown one afternoon, if you recall.
Yeah, I do remember that. It's one of the reasons I put him up
Right.
there. We had
the old court. Made it to the old court.
we had. I remember George. Can't remember George's last name, but a Greek gentleman, and he said something about there being all of the Greeks in Lowell were upset about the old court thing.
Yeah, right.
I said, well, there are 7 Greeks that I know of who didn't care
right.
one way or the other.
That was either George Zaharoulis or George Barakis or George Eliades or one of the Georges. Right. All good people.
And I just said, when I sit down for dinner, I have the 7 Greeks that don't necessarily agree with that.
Right.
So it didn't seem like such a big scandal to me, but it was a big scandal.
It was a gift that when I was the mayor that actually the Greek community, Senator Panagiatakis and others brought to the mayor's reception room. And it did get overplayed in my opinion, but at the end of the day, they certainly have their right to their opinion, They
definitely had their opinions.
Right.
Hey, we can't argue about that.
Correct, exactly.
It's not as momentous as you and I building that boat.
That's right. Right. I wish you had pictures of that. That would be fun.
I don't know what happened to the pictures.
Yeah, I don't think I have any either, but I'll look. I mean, we actually haven't unpacked. We moved 4 years ago, and we haven't unpacked yet. And I know it's hard to believe, but we moved from Carriage Drive over to Troll Lane East.
That was 4 years ago?
Yeah, November of 2014. Yeah, so 3.5 years ago. So 3.5 years ago. But we still haven't unpacked, so maybe when we unpack, we'll find pictures.
Oh, that would be nice if you do, but I don't think I can find pictures.
Yeah.
I don't think there are any left.
It goes back a few years.
Yeah, it goes back a few years. It was back when I made the pictures in my darkroom.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I do want to point out that Jim's father was the sales manager at Lawless Buick.
That's right. Wow,
okay.
Good memory. Yeah.
And Lawless Buick, as you know, is across from the auditorium, the Memorial Auditorium.
Right.
And Mr. Milinazzo actually sold me a really good car once.
Really?
A station wagon.
Nice.
Yeah, it worked out well with my first child.
Yeah.
And we had a really nice time with them.
That's great. But being across from the auditorium, when I graduated from Lowell High School with you in 1972, my father said, come across the street, and in the showroom he had wrapped up a 1963 Chevrolet Impala for my high school present. All registered too. I couldn't believe it.
All registered?
All registered, yep. And my friends and I don't know where you were. You weren't there that night. Because we waited for Bordy Zwicker, ZW. You were gone already. We waited for ZW, today's the Lowell police officer. We waited for him to get his diploma, and then we went across the street.
Yeah, I had, that was the final act that my father had as a superintendent?
Yes, yep.
So it kind of had to be with him that night.
Right.
So
I recall that now.
I was with him, yeah.
Yeah. But that's my memory of Lawless. One of my many memories of Lawless Buick, going across the street and, getting a red 1963 Chevrolet Impala. Wish I had it today. I wish I had it today. That's right. I wish I had it today. Yeah.
And then you got after you got out of Merrimack College, you got a pretty good job with the city, right?
Yeah, well, I went to Merrimack College, graduated in '76, went down to Penn State, did some graduate work, came back here, got a job working as a city planner in 1978, and then in 1980 I became the director of the Planning and Development Office, and I stayed there until 1984, and then I went to the Lowell Plan and Lowell Development and Financial Corporation until 1990, and then I get into banking from there. Because, as you know, Jim, the Lowell Development and Financial Corporation is a consortium of all of the local banks. Right. And we were involved in the first Wang Urban Development Action Grant, the building of what now is the Inn and Conference Center, but it was a Hilton Hotel. We were involved in that. And we were involved in just the whole public-private partnership that really still exists today. It's amazing that it still exists all these years later. And Jimmy Cook's been there since I left in 1990. He's now celebrating his 27th, he just celebrated his 27th year there. And they continue to do a good job. Mayor Samaras mentioned last night that we need to kind of revisit that partnership and reinvigorate that partnership. So I was there till 1990. Then I got into banking for a good number of years. Then I worked at the Lowell Housing Authority, now I'm back at a housing authority in the city of Revere. So it's... And I completed a master's in public administration at Suffolk University. Yeah, Suffolk University. Yeah,
because I went for a master's in public administration at Suffolk, but I didn't complete it.
Yeah.
I got my master's degree in education.
Oh, nice.
So yeah. Well, it was more fitting.
Right. Well, correct. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The thing that I keep thinking of in terms of the old Buick. Sales area is that we need a car museum in there, and we need aficionados who are crazy about cars.
That's right.
And I think I've mentioned that to you before. And
we used to have car shows in the auditorium back then. We used to have car shows right across the street in the auditorium. They used to be able to ramp cars.
My idea is that we allow people to put in cars that they've rebuilt.
Sure. Yeah, that'd be a great idea.
And just leave them there.
Yeah. Yep.
And have people walk by and see old cars and behind glass and protected and everything.
Right.
And it just seems like to me like a good idea.
Yeah, the Jarvis family owns the building, and they do a very good job managing it as commercial property now. Even though the sign I think is still above the front door. Yeah. Buick. It was actually called Lowell Buick at one time, but then Nick Lallis bought it. Back in the I want to say 60s, 70s. Yeah, back in the day.
The National Park Service, it's one of my favorite things to talk about.
Yeah, it should be. I mean, they do. I shopped there too, by the way. I went to the National Park Service bookstore to get books for Christmas. So that was fun.
I shopped at the National Park Service.
Yeah.
And last year I went to the National Park Service and picked up a bunch of coffee mugs that said Centennial 2016 on it.
Nice.
So that was good.
Nice. They do such a good job, the National Park Service, especially the summer music series with Peter Asala and John Marciano. They do a very good job. Yeah.
It's fantastic. But I'm a little worried about the current stress on the Interior
Oh
Department.
yes. Yep. This administration, absolutely.
In this administration?
Yep, absolutely.
I'm a little worried about
good reason to be.
The stress on the National Park Service.
Yep.
And hoping it doesn't stress all the way down to the Lowell's Public.
Correct, right. Lowell National Park.
Lowell National Park. I hear so many things about this issue. I just have to ask you because you're the most authoritative person I've had on the show to mention it. Is Kevin Murphy staying or going?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it's so early in the new council. I've heard rumors too, but no one has spoken to me about it. And I know Kevin just celebrated his 3 years last year. I know that he would like to. He expressed to me a desire to stay.
I'm hoping that he will.
Yeah, he'd like to finish the high school project, and I know he has other economic development projects on the agenda, not the least of which is the Hamilton Canal, which he was involved in not only from the standpoint of being the city manager, which the progress we've made lately, but as a member of our state delegation, because the courthouse obviously is state funded, and all of the infrastructure, most of the infrastructure there is being state funded, state or federal funded, but it's something that he wants to see through. And we just started the planning for the Ayer City urban renewal area. We're actually working with the VFW over there, as you know, on relocating their building and relocating or realigning, I guess, Tanner Street is the best way to put it. And then there's such potential in that whole neighborhood for economic development being right along the little connector. And that's something that I know that the city manager is very interested in continuing to see to fruition. So,
well, I'm hoping that the rumors are just rumors and there's no fact to them.
I think that happens when you have a new city council, but at the end of the day, it's really something that, like I said, no one has talked to me about it, and I think the manager has gotten high marks over his tenure here. I know that the high school project, as you know, was very divisive, and I think now we're getting to be on the same page, and I think that the city manager wants now to continue to come up with the plan that we can all agree on, and go back to the MSBA. I think we're back to the MSBA in June. So we have some time. To go back to. I think it's a June meeting that we're scheduled to go in. And we asked last night at the council meeting through a number of motions. Councilor Elliott, former Mayor Kennedy had some motions on relative to, and Councilor Leahy relative to the next steps with the high school, and to send a letter to the MSBA that we're exploring, I guess is the word to use, to look at other options than the one that was originally voted by the council in June. So in my opinion, the Colley option is off the table based upon the vote.
Yeah, it's my opinion too. I would point out that behind the Wang School, there's 15 acres of farmland that doesn't look that bad.
Yeah,
but
I think you have transportation issues. Again, that's just my opinion. And again, I live in Belvedere, and it was not an issue, even though, despite what you hear from the local radio station, had nothing to do with NIMBY as far as I was concerned. It was being fair to the students. It's always been about the students for me. People say no, it was because he lives there. Absolutely not. It was because students that were living in Pawtucketville, to get up in the morning and make their way over to that part of the city, that part of the city, and 46 buses, and the eminent domain takings that no one really wanted to talk about along Rogers Street. Nick Bossonetto, who, as you now know, was the city engineer, he was interim for a while, talked about taking 12 feet from the sidewalk on Rogers Street. So, I mean, you do that, and all of a sudden, we had the owner, we're the owner of Landon Chevrolet, I think it's called, and the Chrysler dealer come to the city council meeting and say, if you take 12 feet in front of my building, you're going to put me out of business. And then the Alexis family owns the office building there, and you have Milan Pizza. I mean, the red right-of-way line went right through the building of Milan's Pizza. So, again, people didn't want to talk about that. They only wanted to talk about the eminent domain of the dentist's office in downtown. But at the end of the day, it was going to be much more expensive to do the land taking.
I mean, just for the purpose of clarification, NIMBY is not in my backyard.
Right.
So that was the consideration that some people had.
Correct. In fact, my two grandsons, if it had gone to Colley, could walk to school. I mean, they literally live 500 yards from Colley Stadium, so they could walk to school. So, but again, at the end of the day, it's really not fair to the total student population to try to get out there every day.
Well, I wanted to. I've been wanting to for a long time, because I was a downtown advocate. Congratulate you and thank you for your leadership efforts on that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you. I mean, again, I wasn't going to even run for council, as you know. I mean, I had announced in May, probably in the show. I mean, I announced, in May of last year that based upon the commitment I have now made in the city of Revere, and we've got a big housing authority there. We just started a nonprofit affordable housing corporation there, and so we're trying to do some innovative things in Revere. So it's taking a lot of time, but when my board members saw really what was going on up here in Lowell and felt that I could really make a difference, a couple of my board members actually called up and said, I know you said you weren't running, but you really ought to think about, running and see if you can stay involved in the discussions around the high school. So that's what happened.
I think it was very important for you to stay in the discussion.
Yeah.
And I think that you did. I think that you stood up to some really heavy pressure.
Right. I was actually called a cranky old uncle by one of the, and then everybody's entitled to their opinion, but yeah, I was called a cranky old uncle that stands off in the corner at a party and just talks to himself. Because the allegation was that I was really making too much of certain parts of the Colley plan, because I was talking about it every Tuesday night. But it really had to be talked about. It had to be discussed. And the mayor did a very good job, and the people that were involved in the effort to get the signatures, over 10,000 signatures, as you know. I mean, it was just yeoman's work, and they did a great job. I mean, and that whole high school project will go down in the in the history books
There's a new Dick Howe book coming out on this.
Oh, is there?
election. No, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
It should be.
Yeah, they should be.
They should be.
Between Dick Howe and Paul Marion,
We should get
Right,
something out of them.
That's
yeah.
right. And you're an author. You've written books.
Yeah, it's.
Last one you wrote was on the boathouse.
Yes,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
on the boathouse.
Yes.
That was fun.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was. I got that. I actually read that.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
That was fun. Can you tell us a little bit about the water leak that occurred today on the?
Oh my goodness! I saw that breaking news. Yeah, I got some information from the city. It was over by the Lord overpass, and I believe it's been repaired now. But I know that they were closing traffic on Dutton Street and on Fletcher Street and on Jackson Middle. At least one end of it, they were closing traffic. But I think right now, I'm hoping it's been repaired because the water was literally 3 or 4 deep along Dutton Street.
it?
Yeah, 3 or 4 deep along. And to think about how cold it is. I mean, right now we're fortunate that I think today's the warmest afternoon it's been in a long time. I think it's 30 or 31 degrees. But now with the storm coming in, and then on Friday and Saturday, they're talking about, I think, temperatures around 5 degrees and wind chill minus 20, minus 30. So I hope that water that's now on Dutton Street drains somewhere, drains
I
away.
hope that it
If
does,
it
too.
turns into ice, it'll be awful. It'll be awful.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be -7 tomorrow. So.
Right. But the city manager, by the way, is having a press conference today at 5 o'clock to talk about the high school and the heating issues there. And we were able to.
Oh, I think that's necessary.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is not live, so I'm not taking the thunder away from the city manager, but he was able to get a DCAM waiver, the Division of Capital and Asset Management at the state level, and hire Train, TRANE, and they're an energy company.
Oh, yeah.
Right, to come in,
Yeah.
and do the specifications and the work that needs to be done to get that issue resolved once and for all. It's really unfortunate that it went on this long. Again, some of the parts are, as we heard last night from the DPW gentleman that spoke at the council meeting, because the equipment is old, some of the parts, either aren't readily available or they have to order them, and the lead time is 8 to 10 weeks. And again, when this is done, I'll certainly have questions of the administration relative to, I know you can't have
Would
every.
it make more sense to
Correct.
pull those out and put in new ones?
Right, correct. It would, and that's what may end up happening under this contract that's being announced today at 5 o'clock. And that may end up happening, but at the same time, I would hope that. Again, you can't order every pot and stock every pot because that would be impossible.
Right, that would be
but
impossible.
but at the end of the day, I mean, if you have a history of certain pots that don't work or start up come September, I mean, and Council Conway last night was saying to me, and he's right, that, why didn't we turn the heating system on in September just to test everything, even though it was still the summertime?
Right.
Turn it on and do temperature tests and so forth. So maybe next year that will go into a preventive maintenance plan to make that happen.
I just think that if this happened at our homes.
Oh, I have 2 frozen pipes, by the way, at my house. As we sit here, I have 2 frozen pipes
I
at
have
my
a couple frozen pipes
Yeah,
in my house
yeah.
too, and my dishwasher isn't working because it's frozen.
Yeah,
So-
my washing machine is not working.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so.
But if I just look at it as being something that if it happened at our own homes, we'd expect
Right.
we'd have to buy a new
Correct.
boiler.
Correct. Exactly right.
And in my opinion, if this is happening at the high school,
Yeah.
we have to buy a new
Correct.
boiler.
Correct.
And that's the way it goes.
I mentioned last night when they were doing some work over at the JFK Civic Center, they actually brought in 2 big, I'll call them big rigs. They were tractor trailers that had heating and air conditioning units on the trailers. They brought them in as temporary units while they were able to design and retrofit work at the Civic Center. So I suggested that maybe we do that over at the high school, but it sounds like the manager went the next step and is able now to get this company in to begin doing the design work and the upgrades that need to be done.
Well, I remember Armin Mercier, who, as you know, predated you in the Lowell Housing Authority,
Right.
talking about how he had lost power one cold winter, and he brought in a temporary
Yes.
on a truck
Yes. Yep.
unit
Yep.
to
Yep. To provide
take
heat.
care of
Right.
to provide the heat.
That's right.
And it worked.
Yep. We're having a lot of no heat calls down in Revere, as you can
Well,
imagine.
I called my plumber yesterday and
Did you?
said, by
Yeah.
the way, we forgot to
Yeah.
get the boiler cleaned
Yeah.
this year.
Yeah.
So when you get a chance, and he said, well, it's going to be a while before I get a
I'll
chance.
see you in May, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's Buddy Upson. He's a good guy, but
Oh, he is. Yeah, he's been around a long time.
yeah, he's
It's
been
that
around
company.
a long
Yeah,
time. And,
yeah,
and,
good
and,
company.
and he takes very good care of me, so
Yeah.
that's good. But what's the effect of this cold weather on the infrastructure in the?
Oh, in the city? Oh,
In
my
the city.
goodness. Everything. I mean, you heard the library was closed for a couple of days. The library actually runs off the same heating system as City Hall. And because some of the pressure, because of the heat being called for in City Hall, in fact, the pipes in the manager's office were clanging so loud they couldn't even conduct a meeting because, again, it's a steam system, the old steam system, clanging, clanging, clanging. And with that happening and trying to gauge the pressure to make sure there's enough pressure to get the heat across the way over to the library, they're having a problem. So the basement and the first floor of the library had no heat. So again, that's an infrastructure problem. We're hearing about the Pawtucket Memorial School. We're hearing about some of the other schools that
The
have.
Bartlett School burst a couple of tubes yesterday.
Did they really? So yeah, and the kitchen over at the high school had a problem. In fact, we saw pictures from some parents showing that some of the equipment over the high school kitchen was actually covered in ice. That's how cold it was. So there are infrastructure, and then what you just talked about a few minutes ago, the pipe bursting along the Lord Overpass.
Right.
I mean, those are infrastructure issues. I mean, obviously we're an old city, so we have old infrastructure. Because of the combined sewer overflow project, a lot of the underground work has been upgraded, but still we have a lot that has not been. So, because we're having such a tough cold spell that we're going to probably unfortunately see more of that.
Describe for me the Lord Overpass, the way it's being talked about. Redesigned.
It's actually a simple way to put it, because I'm not an engineer, is to think about the Lord Overpass as being a elevated, I guess is the word. The new Lord Overpass is going to be depressed and at street level. And they're going to do widening.
So the pipes will be under the ground.
Correct. That's right. The pipes will be under the ground. Correct. And they're going to do some widening along Thorndike Street. They're going to do some new lights by Salapoli's Thorndike Exchange property.
Okay.
And with the improvements going along at the South Common area, that whole infrastructure will be redone to support what's going on at the Hamilton Canal. What we need to try to find out, and dealing with Pan Am, the railroad companies, to try to get access over to the Western Avenue studios, because that is just a gem over there, and to try to get access, not only pedestrian access, but vehicular access from that whole area is something that I'd love to try to see happen. Right now, it's a no, but just dealing with the railroad. But there's got to be a way that people smarter than I am that could come up with a better way to access that Western Avenue studio, part of the downtown.
I thought they had access to that Western Avenue studio.
They have some walking
train.
access. I mean, I went on the walking tour with Dick Howe on Saturday, and we went up over. We actually went up across by South Common, crossed by the Gallagher Terminal, and walked up by the old front steps to the Commodore Ballroom Club, and then walked across that way and went over and back down. Yeah, back down. What I would call a Lord Overpass coming off of Fletcher Street, and then made our way over across the railroad tracks that way over to Western Avenue. It was a long way around, a circuitous way,
it's
right?
very circuitous.
Yeah. So, but I do think that the new realignment of Jackson Street coming out onto Thorndike Street will provide us with more accessible, walkable access. I'd like to be able to drive across. So that's still in the design stages and negotiations, if we can, with Pan Am.
Who is doing the main work on Jackson Street? Which company?
The design work, I believe, is being done by, I'm trying to, not awful, I can picture the name of the company, Vanessa Hangen. Vanessa Hangen is doing the design work. Used to be Vanessa Hangen Breslin, now it's Vanessa Hangen. And they've been doing work in the city for a long time. So they know Lowell very well. They know the engineering department. They know the public works department. So they're doing the engineering work. I don't know who's doing the actual construction work. I know the parking garage is also out for design now as well.
I've heard that it
Yeah,
is,
yeah, so that'll be a big addition. That's going to be a 900-car parking garage. But we still have to get the transfer done between the National Park Service and the city for the land over by the parking
Right,
lot,
right.
for, so that we can accommodate all the tour buses, and that'll happen as well. Congresswoman Tsongas's office has been working very closely with City Manager Murphy, and I'm hoping that, sometimes if it's your last act when she leaves office next year, it'll be a big one to get that done.
Yeah,
So.
that will be neat. I'll
Yeah,
have to
yeah.
ask her about
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Well, thank you for coming on. It's been.
No, I appreciate the invitation.
It's always fun to have you on because
Thank you.
we go back for such a
A long
long
way.
time.
I know. We keep talking about that, but it's all good. Well, that's what Lowell's about. I mean, it's the relationship you've had over the years with people.
Do you realize it's 49 years?
I know.
49
Incredible.
years.
Yeah.
It's
yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
So, well, Pericles and I thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thanks for
And,
having me. Appreciate it. Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy
To you
New
and
Year,
your
too.
family. Thank you.
Thank you. This is Jim Peters on Peters Principles, and we've had Councilor JimMilinazzo, and he's used a couple new terms like Councilor Conway and Mayor Samaras.
Yeah.
And it's going to take me a while to get used to those
Right.
ones, but
That's right.
It's a good thing.
It is a good thing. Well, thank you again.
So, anyways, thank you very much.